This episode of the Nerf Herder Council is brought to you by Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download.
I'm Kevin Thompson. I'm Chubray from Return of the Jedi. You're listening to the Nerf Herder Council.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder.
You can't use that word. Only we can use that word.
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate. Featuring your hosts, JT. This episode of the podcast is turning into a goddamn episode of Nova. AJ.
Yeah, Rebels is a lot like our show, where we think we have a good idea, and then it just fails in execution.
Steve.
Show me on the doll where the last Jedi touched you.
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, we ask the question, can the Rise of Skywalker provide as satisfying a conclusion as the MCU's Avengers Endgame? Warning, lots of spoilers for Endgame here if you haven't seen the movie.
This is the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. With me are AJ and Steve, and I can only hear out of one side of my head right now, so it sounds pretty funny in my headphones right now. So if I sound a little goofy on this episode, it's because I'm basically half deaf.
98 episodes in, and now we're making excuses to sound goofy.
Yeah. This is just my vocal delivery.
He's Ford Prefect from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie. He's most deaf.
Yeah, I'm most deaf. I'm telling you, man, this double ear infection is no fun. I'm allergic to antibiotics, and so they gave me a medication, which they said, I knew this wasn't good. They said, well, since you're allergic to everything, we're going to give you this doxycycline. It doesn't usually work very well for ears, but we'll try it and see what happens. I'm going, oh, great, sweet. All right, that's good. Perfect.
They're like, here's some essential oils.
Yeah.
Go have fun, anti-vaxxer.
What are you going to do? Do some... Right. So, anyway, for tonight's topic, we do have to put a little disclaimer right here off the top, which will be probably in the show intro if we do what we usually do, but just in case, we'll double down. This episode is going to have spoilers for Avengers Endgame. So even though we are not a Marvel podcast, in case any of you out there listening, this means you, listener 23.
Unless our hits are through the roof, and then welcome to the Marvel podcast.
Yeah. Like quadruples, we're like, all right, we're the Nerf Herder or MCU, whatever. Screw Star Wars.
We'll think about something. It took us like a week to figure out the last name of the show. So
exactly.
We'll go from Nerf Herder Council to World Security Council.
There you go. Perfect. Yep. But yeah, so if you have not seen Avengers Endgame, this episode will contain spoilers for that, so you may want to turn it off. So what we wanted to talk about tonight was basically how I'm drawing a blank on the movie title.
Long story short,
can I help you out?
Yeah, please.
Go for it, AJ.
So we've seen Endgame.
Rise of Skywalker. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, we've seen Endgame smash box office records. The hype was through the roof, and the hype for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is as well.
Yep. Now,
I don't think. Did you guys actually think that Endgame was going to stick the landing as perfectly as it did?
No.
Yes.
I really didn't, and that's not like a slight. It's just that was not a thought process of me going into the theater, was you guys really nailing this thing. I was just looking forward to seeing the end of this thing. I really was not thinking about, how or why they were doing things. So yeah, no, my expectations were non-existent. So.
paying off 21 movies, though, that's never been done before. It's never been tried before.
Right.
So it's pretty astounding. And now come December, we've got the payoff of 8 other movies, 9 if you count Rogue One, leading up to it. So, and I guess Solo too, but it's not part of the Skywalker saga.
No, that's just an origin story.
So can Star Wars do what Marvel did and write a satisfactory conclusion to this thing?
Yeah, and I mean, see, when I damn it, stupid.
Hey, it was me coughing for a month.
I know.
Straight, now it's your turn.
This is what I get, man. This is what I get for making funny.
That is what you get.
Yeah, so it's just karma. Yeah, I walked out of the theater having seen Endgame, and I just thought, man, I hope the Rise of Skywalker can do that, because
and you got not to go into extreme detail yet, but it was everything. It was fan service. It was bringing you up. It was putting you back down. It was bringing you back up again. It was callbacks to 21 other movies, and they nailed every bit of it. And the thing was, we left AJ out of the discussion the night that we were texting because I didn't know if he had seen the movie yet or not.
Right.
And we were just talking about how good the movie was, and then it started to drift off into, damn, do you think Star Wars can pull off what these guys just did? Because everything was so flawless in this movie, and ultimately we started to get on a tangent and then went, dude, we gotta save this for the show.
Yeah, exactly. I think the easy answer, and obviously go into detail, is no, Star Wars can't.
That's my thought too.
But I will give 2 reasons why Marvel had it easier, even though it was a lot more films. That's also part of it. They had a lot more to work with, a lot more story. And also, it was obviously a very linear thing. It was, okay, well, here's all these good guys, but there's obviously this one big bad guy, and you're not going to have all this buildup to have the bad guy, the bad guy won. So,
yeah, true.
And also, I mean, Endgame is an awesome movie, but it really is the second part of a 2-part thing. So it's almost like a 5.5, 6 hour long movie. So that makes it that gives it a little bit of an advantage.
See, I wasn't thinking about that either. I was kind of letting Endgame stand alone, even though you are 100% right. But yeah, I was not really counting Infinity War as a build up to that, honestly.
I just kind of think you have to, because, you know, my mom wanted to go see Endgame, and I asked her, well, have you seen Infinity War? And she said, no. I'm like, well, and when you think about it in that context, well, then you don't know why half the people are there. You don't know what the snap is and all this stuff.
Yeah, well, one of Gwen's friends said that he hated it, and she was like, well, did you see all this and this and this? And he was like, well, this is the first Marvel movie I've seen. Well, well, there you have it. How
are you kidding me?
How the hell do you see part 22 of a 22-part series and then sit there and go, I don't get it. This is stupid. Well,
this is terrible.
Well, that's why, you know?
Probably hated Return of the King. And okay, lots of people hated Matrix Revolutions, but
not me. I love it.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love all the Matrix movies.
That's a different podcast entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
So saying that they had it easier, maybe, like you said, the linear.
Only in those 2 respects, or 3. Sorry.
Right. I could see those. Honestly, it is very linear. The one thing that I came up with, honestly, is one of the complaints that you and I have had for a long time, John, is that everything that we needed to know for the Marvel Cinematic Universe got done in movies. Like you didn't need Luke Cage, and you didn't need Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It would help you, but none of that stuff really mattered to the main story. The main story was handed to you in all these movies, and we've said that for years, where it's like, if Star Wars gave us the entire meat and potatoes in the movie instead of saying, what the hell's going on here? And it's like, oh, well, if you watch Rebels season 2, episode 3, you'd know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, when you have to go to all those different sources to figure out the entire story, it makes it tough.
Yeah.
You know, for some of us that just don't care, I guess, enough to look at all the comic books and the EU and the TV shows, where Marvel is just like, we're going to feed you everything through these 22 movies. So you're
not missing anything.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, because I mean, like we brought up on a previous show, you know, not a lot of people are talking about Operation Cinder, and let's say that they use Operation Cinder as the basis for putting Palpatine back in this movie. There's a huge segment of the fan base that's going to go, what kind of dumb crap is that? Whereas the people that are familiar with it from the books and the video game are going to understand it and it'll make sense.
So this is where I'll disagree with you, because we've talked about this stuff before and how they've done a great job of augmenting the main stories of the movies without making them required knowledge. So like Darth Maul showing up in Solo. You don't have to have watched Rebels. You don't even have to have watched episode 1.
Right.
Even if you, let's say you did watch episode 1 and then he shows up in Solo, you're like, well, how the hell is that? It's not crucial. Like, you do know that people do come back from the dead sometimes. It's a pop culture franchise, so you don't really need to know how he's back. What you can do is you can go, oh my God, Darth Maul's back. What the hell happened there? And then you can go looking for the answer. But it's not like the entire movie collapsed because they didn't spell it out for you ahead of time.
No, well, I understand where you're going with that, and
I mean, hell, how much of the original trilogy was callbacks to events that were never told?
I just think it's different because basically what they're saying in this movie, from everything we can gather, is that the Emperor has kind of like been behind this whole thing the whole time, and all people know that have seen the movies is that he got thrown down a shaft and blown up, and now he's back. You're gonna go, what the hell? I mean, your point is valid, but I think because this is such an enormous plot point, I don't think that it's something that you can just. Having it not explained in the movies makes it a little bit questionable, and I think a lot of people are going to crap on that.
I don't know. I mean, Phasma showed up in Last Jedi, and as far as we knew, she was blown up in a trash compactor on Starkiller Base.
But dude, think about the characters you're talking about. It's Captain Phasma. She has like 18 seconds of screen time.
I'm just saying,
you're talking about Darth Maul. It was like, and it was just a cameo at the end of Solo.
It's not
affecting. It's not affecting the entire whole main storyline of Star Wars. I mean, it's a different thing.
Characters coming back without explanation is not unprecedented.
Yeah, but this is too big for that. That's what I'm saying. Your point is completely valid. I'm just saying that.
And you're also jumping to the conclusion that they won't explain it properly. You don't even know how the Emperor is coming back or if he's coming back at this point. All we heard was a laugh at the end of a trailer, and we're already assuming that we know it's going to play off a video game and he's going to do this big pivotal thing. And who the hell knows, man? They're great in this direction.
True.
We've talked about that before, too, how like you think you know something from the trailer, and it's nothing like what the trailer makes it appear as.
Well, I mean, and that's another reason why I don't think they can stick the landing with this. I mean, because with some people they will, and some people they won't. For that exact reason, because now everybody who thinks, let's say the Emperor's not like a huge deal or isn't all over the movie, the people that heard the Emperor laugh and were like, oh my God, the Emperor's back. If he's not in 90% of the movie, they're going to shit their pants and just throw a fit about, that's crap, man. Where's the Emperor? Mm-hmm. Just like, when Luke Skywalker was only in 30 seconds of The Force Awakens, and then he was different in The Last Jedi. I mean,
I will say, to AJ's point, the fact that we're going on 11 years of the MCU and 40 plus years of Star Wars, it is harder to pull it off, I guess, to try to stick the landing the way Endgame did. And honestly, I do feel like that's part of the problem too, is that you had 3 movies between 1977 and 1983, and then you took 16 years off, with the exception of books and TV. And then you gave us 3 more movies and took another 10, 12 years off, or whatever the hell it is. The MCU was just movie, sometimes twice a year, so it's like everything was so fresh that all the callbacks were easy to play off of. You knew when Steve and Bucky were saying, don't do anything stupid, you're like, dude, I just saw this like 5 years ago. I know that from Captain America.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's easy to work off all that stuff because it's still fresh in your mind. So it's like, if Star Wars was to do the same thing and start doing these callbacks to, and I know this is weird to say, to call back to 1977, there's going to be some people, my daughter per se, people like us will be fine, but some people, the younger audience who they're targeting now, are going to sit there with a confused look on their face while we're laughing like, they called back to, episode 4, and where half of your audience might not even get that because they don't really know the original trilogy the way we do, where, Marvel could just keep spoon feeding you all these fan service moments during that movie, and everything was just like, I remember that and that and that and that. On your left, Captain. Oh yeah, I know that one too, and all that. Everything just worked immediately when they did it.
It's more at the forefront of your mind. Yeah. And the other thing I just thought of, I mean, it's with Marvel, it's a little different because, you know, Lucasfilm has the story group, and there's all that talk about whether or not they actually did have all this planned out well in advance and all that. And Marvel, I mean, these movies are based off of comic books, some of which have been around for like 70 years. And these things are already established. So there wasn't a ton of original, you know, storyline that needed to be written because, you know, for example, I mean, the Winter Soldier. It's in the comics that, you know, Bucky gets frozen and then he turns into the Winter Soldier. So we knew that. They're just throwing in some cool details in between.
There's a lot different between the MCU and the comic adaptations, though.
Well, no, I know that, but yes,
versions, yeah.
But how each character turned out, there isn't. I mean, there's a Thanos. Again, the Winter Soldier is a perfect example. You know, the Falcon is, you know, Captain America in the comics after a while, and so all they had to do is just, you know, oh, how do you get there? And, you know, and even the how they get there, they bring Easter eggs from the comics into it. So they kind of had a very definitive roadmap where they say there's a definitive roadmap for the Star Wars trilogy, but it's definitely been called into question.
Yeah, I think that's Steve, you made that point first up in the podcast, actually, was, you know, talking about the plan that Marvel had. And I think that actual plan of building to this started after probably Iron Man 2, I think. Like,
yeah,
the first Iron Man was
there.
just dropping a Hail Mary, like, let's see what happens if we put this out.
Yeah.
And it caught fire. And so they put out a second one, and they're like, oh, we've got something here. And then they started really trying to build towards something. And it was a consistent vision throughout where, like you said, with Star Wars, it was George made a movie. And then it was a hit, so he made the other two. And then he was good for a while. And then he decided 16 years later that he's going to tell the first 3. And then he was done. Like, he wrapped up his 6-film arc right there. And then Disney buys the franchise and decides, you know what, let's make some more of these things. So it was never from the start this whole plan that we're going to go 9 movies and we're going to do this and this and this and this and this is how we're going to get there. No, it was made up on the fly. And even the story group, they've said repeatedly, they don't tell the writers what stories to tell. All their job is to make sure there's not a conflict in canon.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I will say, I don't sit here and think that it's going to be a bad movie. I think it is going to wrap up nicely, but leaving the theater when immediately it's going to start getting compared to Endgame, especially since things, 250K away from breaking the all-time record right now. It's at like 2.4 or something, and Avatar is 2.78 or something like that. I mean, things, you know, within another week, it's probably going to break the record. So immediately it's going to get compared to Endgame. It's like, you know, when we sit back in December and go, all right, how did I feel when this phase of the MCU was done, and how do I feel about Star Wars being done? I don't think it's going to hit us as well as Endgame did. Not that it's going to be a bad movie. I just don't see how, based on everything we've said so far, it's going to wrap up in that fashion. Like, I don't doubt that they're going to have a good story. I just don't think you're going to feel as good leaving the theater when this one's done as you did leaving Endgame.
I think we could. I just don't think everybody will.
Right.
It's just, you know, They could put out something that's on the level of, you know, Empire Strikes Back, and I just feel like the fandom basically is just dictated that some people are just not going to. I mean, I was just commenting back and forth with another Last Jedi hater today, and you know, these assholes with their effing opinions about, you know, well, you know, yeah. They just announced that the Game of Thrones guys are doing the next movie, which means I was right. Rian Johnson is out. I'm like, where did you read that? Just because you don't like the movie doesn't mean the whole thing is screwed, you know? And as I told him, I'm like, oh, really? Can you show me the press release where they said Rian Johnson's not doing a movie?
Right.
Because last press release I saw regarding Rian Johnson was Rian Johnson's doing more movies. So until I get an official press release saying he isn't, you're not right. It's your stupid ass opinion because you don't like a movie.
Yeah, the
And
other
people
guys
like
are going
that
to
are
have
going to,
their.
I mean, it could be Empire Strikes Back Part 2. It could be that good, and they're still going to leave the theater going, well, I wanted to see more Han Solo, Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, the crazy thing is they said the Game of Thrones
Dildos.
guys are going to have the next 3 movies, and the amount, like you just said, the amount of complaining after people had, vehemently hate the Rian Johnson Last Jedi thing, but then they're complaining that Rian Johnson's not going to have the first trilogy after Episode 9. It's like what the hell? It's like we've said it before. You cannot please the Star Wars fan base. It's
The other thing
it's stupid.
The other thing Episode 9 has going against it that Marvel didn't was there was a very clear sense in the Marvel movies that they were building towards something, right? Like the stakes got higher, and Thor Ragnarok, in my opinion, Thor Ragnarok is really like the last setup piece for Infinity War. Infinity War picks up right where Ragnarok leaves off. So it's like the perfect lead in, and like by that point you're like, okay, the pieces are in place. There's something big for the next movie. This one doesn't. It just feels like another episode. Last Jedi is a great, as we said, standalone movie, but I don't feel like it raised the stakes to where you just know there's this big climax coming. It's just going to be a stop.
Yeah, I one of the reasons I just don't think that they can nail it, and I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to mention this, is, basically piggybacking off of your point. It just, it didn't really feel like some big thing was coming. So they just decided, okay, we're going to end the Skywalker. Here's this trilogy. Okay, it's ending the Skywalker saga. It's like, okay, but there's so many things that you could continue to do. I mean, this trilogy just feels smaller than the others. It's not
very much
as wide in scope.
You're 100% right. Like you just said, great standalone movie, but leaving the theater after Episode 8 and even looking back on it in my head right now, you're just like, where was the oh my god build up to make you hyped about Episode 9? It just kind of,
and there's not even anything that you're like, okay, what do I have to know that's this big universe shattering thing? Like, I mean, the Marvel universe was the Infinity Gauntlet, and half of all life being wiped out. This is like, okay, well, maybe there's more Jedi.
Yeah, right.
Maybe the Emperor's been around.
Like
Who's
AJ
the
said,
what's the big conflict here?
Like AJ said, the build up, Infinity War ended, the bad guy won, a la Episode 5. But at the same point, you started Endgame with a different view of the end of Infinity War with Barton and everything and his family disappearing. So it was like, not only did it start there, it overlapped Infinity War and a different thing. So you still had the big build up at the beginning of the movie, where
it hung on the consequences of the previous movie. Where this one, they've already said, is going to jump ahead in time a bit.
Right.
So I feel like we're going to miss the consequences period of the Resistance getting kicked down to a couple dozen people.
Right.
We're just going to come back and have a group of fighters again.
Yeah. Like we already saw in the teaser trailer, we ended Episode 8 with a broken lightsaber hilt and 5 people in a room wondering what the hell they're going to do next. And then teaser trailer, we already got the lightsaber back together. Not saying that they can't show it coming back together, but it's just kind of like you're not going to be surprised by it or anything because we already saw it in the teaser trailer. So it's not going to hit you with some oh my god moment that they put it back together or anything.
That's a good point though. Thinking back to that teaser trailer,
not that we didn't know what the hell was going on in Infinity War to Endgame either. We definitely knew what was going on, but still.
But the teaser trailer didn't show us any like big climb. That we've heard that there's like a battle to end all battles in this movie, but we didn't see any of it. We saw 2 ships and Kylo's thing like chasing down Rey. That was it. So whatever big visuals or big pieces there are to see has not been seen yet. So maybe we will see some of that build up that we need to really like get more context on why we need to care about what happens in this movie.
Right.
I just think that and this is a content thing, so it doesn't really apply to our point really. But like you said, AJ, what have we been building up to? It hasn't really been defined. Whereas with the Marvel stuff, it's like, okay, well, Infinity Stones, they run everything. And if you get them all together, whoever's got it has like ultimate power. In this trilogy, it's
like you said, all the intertwined things, Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers had the Tesseract and the staff, so that was 2 stones, and then not Ragnarok, but one was it the first Thor or the second Thor? Was
Second.
That had the ether and everything. Yep. It's like everything was just intertwining. Where like you're just saying, it's like, well, what is our end game for episode 9? It's like we know it's obviously something with the Jedi and Rey and this that, but still, it's kind of like, what is it though?
See, I think the way that they could nail it is if in episode 9 they actually present, like, let's say, they bring the Emperor back and all this stuff ties together, and all of a sudden it paints the previous 2 movies in a whole different light. Like it was always in those movies, but you didn't know it because you didn't have context. So maybe it is all there, and the answers we're looking for have been right under our nose. We just weren't told why this stuff was like that.
That would be miraculous if they could.
I mean, but I think that's how they would have to do it, because
the Saw movies where you go back and watch them from the beginning and go, oh God, you've been telling us since the first one.
He was in the room the whole time.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't know about you guys to go off topic there, but man, I sat there in the theater for all those Saw movies and never enjoyed them because I was too damn busy trying to figure the damn things out. That was my whole thing, where it's just like, dude, I gotta try to figure out this movie before they give it away at the end.
I was just into people getting ground up into hamburger in all sorts of creative ways. So, yeah, no, I mean, that's a way they could do it. And I wonder if that's even possible again, but then again, that'll fall under the heading of some of us will love it and some people won't, because even if they do that, like we've said before, like what if it makes episode 8 like a great movie? There's still going to be those jackasses. Well, I still hate The Last Jedi. They're just not going to, they're not going to look at it contextually in terms of the whole story and understand that it was necessary to tie everything together. So,
yeah, Marvel did a much better job of that, where they had different tones for the different movies, and each character kind of fell into their groove as far as this is the style of movie they work in. And then the masterstroke with Infinity War and Endgame was, how do you combine all those styles and give everyone their moments without throwing off the balance of the movie?
Yeah.
And Star Wars has had different tones based on the different directors, especially in this trilogy, obviously. I don't know that you can really marry those things together and have it feel consistent.
Yeah.
Like, that was the biggest problem everyone had with Last Jedi, was that all the characters took this wild left turn.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you bring that back then so they feel like episode 7 and 8 built to this point in their character arc?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And and the interesting thing is that, Star Wars, I mean, the room for error is less because there's less movies, but they had several films, of the 8, I at least 3 were incredibly divisive, episodes 1, 2, and 8. Episode 1 is obviously aging better, and
I thought you were going to say 1, 2, and 3 because of, at the time, the prequels weren't the movies people wanted to see.
Yeah, but episode 3, pretty much everyone's like, okay, well, this is a cool movie. And now, especially down the road, however many years it's been, like 14 years, people are like, yeah, that movie kicks ass. The ones that still get panned are The Last Jedi, Phantom Menace, and Attack of the Clones. So there's 3 of 8. But really with Marvel, and every time I leave the theater after a Marvel movie, it's like, even the ones that you're just like, nah, they're still really good. I mean, they didn't mess up a single one of those. Even something like, like the Incredible Hulk.
Yes,
it was still cool.
I mean, to this day, Hulk is the only one that you can really sit there and be like, that was a piece of dog crap. But even then, it was like, it still worked.
Yeah, it's still cool. It's just, it's not as good as the others. I mean, there wasn't a single one where people just went, well, that sucked. This is terrible. Like they did with The Last Jedi or with, the prequels. I mean, it just didn't happen.
Like I've said on the podcast before, Doctor Strange is probably in my bottom 5 or something like that, just because I didn't really enjoy the movie. But the thing freaking works.
Yeah. See, and I love that one. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, you can still enjoy it. You don't really like it. I happen to love it. Right. And then I'm one of the few people that thought Black Panther was, but it's still cool. And of course it looks amazing.
Right.
But I mean, Star Wars didn't have that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they didn't have it where every single movie was, the original trilogy was basically like the MCU, where it was like everyone loved all 3 movies. It just depends on how much you like them. You know, some people are like, oh, Return of the Jedi is the weakest, but it still kicks ass.
And that totally felt like a culmination, didn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
And 1, 2, 3 felt like a culmination. You knew that once, 2 wrapped, you knew that once 3 kicked off, you were like, okay, here we are. We're in the meat of it now. We're going to see this. 8 did the whole saga such a disservice. Like, I don't feel like it set anything up.
Exactly.
It almost, to me...
Again, good movie, but it didn't do anything to get you hyped up for episode 9, though.
Nah, see...
I can't say anything, but it didn't give you...
When you've only got 9 chapters, to take one that sets up the last chapter and have it kind of just do its own thing instead is...
Like, because you can think about how the end of episode 2 set up 3. You can think about how the end of episode 5 set up 6. What redeeming quality does the end of 8 have to set up 9 right now?
They're not dead. That's all we got.
That's
well,
it.
no, I mean, we know that the distress signal was received.
Right.
Okay, so there's going to be a huge battle. Yes, we do. Come on, they're not going to put that in there and just be like, oh, look, nobody came, and it's not going to be 12 dudes flying around the Millennium Falcon trying to avoid the whole First Order.
What I mean is,
it's not going to happen.
From The Last Jedi, we don't know it.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We've heard it already. We know that even some of the books that they're coming out with.
Only an idiot
that
wouldn't infer that. I mean, come on. Let's be honest. I know
what said infer, meaning it wasn't told in the movie.
I know what you're saying, but come on, dude. I mean, for the sake of this discussion, I mean,
look. Empire Strikes Back ended with Lando saying, "Hey, we're gonna go to Tatooine and get Han."
Yeah,
that was in the movie.
Okay.
Last Jedi did not say anywhere at the end, "Oh, by the way, the distress signal was received."
Man, you're really going to nitpick this, aren't you?
If it's trying to set up something, it needs to actually set it up and not just hope the audience guesses at something.
It did set it up. They said that the distress signal was sent out. That's your setup. Because you can't go into the movie now, again, with 12 turds just flying around the Millennium Falcon hoping to escape the First Order.
I will say
it can't happen.
To AJ's point.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but...
To AJ's point, episode 8 probably would have ended better if right at the last second they would have got a reply, like a grainy ass reply that somebody got the message.
Do you think they wrote it that way to specifically be able to put a time jump in there, knowing that they can't just have this one start like 5 minutes later too, because then the whole like sequel trilogy happens in like a day and a half?
Yeah. I mean, here's the one thing that I'm thinking about though. If they had actually like put something in there, like, message received or whatever, how impotent would that have seemed? Like, hey, we got your message. And, oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah. You're fighting who?
I guess you can come to us now.
Yeah. If you can get out, we got burgers and beer.
Right.
And I guess personal level for the whole thing, at least to wrap up on my end, personal feelings. I don't know if there's anybody that's going to be on the screen in episode 9 that if they get the axe, I'm going to feel anything like emotional about it. You know, watching Endgame and you saw what happened to Black Widow, it was kind of like you felt bad watching her and Barton fight, but when she died, it was just kind of like, eh. But something about Tony dying at the end was like I told John when we were texting after the movie, I was like, him dying didn't do it, but the whole thing with his daughter and everything
got me.
When he said the I love you 3000, I gave myself a headache clenching my teeth so much so I didn't look like a bitch crying in the theater. And I'm like, on a personal level, is there anybody in Star Wars right now that I'm going to sit there and give myself a headache, clenching my teeth, trying not to cry over? I don't think so. And
Chewbacca?
The closest thing is probably Chewbacca.
Yeah.
I swear to God. Like anybody else,
R2.
I'm just going to kind of be like,
yes.
Mate, yeah. But like, do you think about Finn and Rey and Kylo and this? You're just like, any of those guys catch the axe, Poe, any of these guys, you're just going to be like, like that sucks.
But you're not losing Tony Stark was like losing Han Solo.
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically the Han Solo of this thing. I mean, he was in all the movies pretty much.
You're right. There was your moment right there in the Star Wars saga.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Solo
just,
gets that lightsaber.
I just didn't personally have it,
Yeah.
I guess. That's all.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I mean,
And then I got to think about the other personal things, like John, you especially are not one to hold your tongue back, especially during opening weekend in a movie theater. You like to jump up and cheer and everything. So I know you were probably jumping up and screaming when Captain America picked up Thor's hammer in Endgame. You know, it's like, is there going to be a point in episode 9 where you're like, where you have that same feeling? I don't know, like, if there's going to be that moment of jumping up cheering mid movie or holding back tears or anything like that. And so
Yeah.
I don't know what they could bring back that would be like. By the way, I'm such a honk for this thing. Mjolnir. When that thing came back on the screen, I was like, I've seen that movie twice, and I jumped up both times. Humiliated my girlfriend by doing so, but I don't care. It was great. But we already got the Falcon coming back. Like, all those moments were in Force Awakens. I don't know what they've got left for 9 that would really like get fans that riled up.
Side note, now that Tony Stark's done, Fat Thor is the greatest character in the MCU.
Fat Thor was awesome.
Fat Fortnite Thor is the greatest character in the MCU now. I don't care. But yeah, like, I didn't even feel it when it came back. I thought it was cool that he held his hand out and got it back, but it was like, that was just a cool moment. But I will say that when it was in the slow motion and the crap was hitting the fan, you know, during the battle, and it started moving really slow, I'm like, somebody else is picking it up. It's not going to Thor's hand. So I kind of knew ahead of time, but it was trying to process. I'm like, was it Cap, since he budged it in Ultron? Or, you know, the comic books actually had Black Widow be worthy of it at some point, and she was like a female Thor. So I was just like, ooh, are they trying to like bring, there is something about, you know, the time and blah, blah, blah. Is Black Widow still alive and she's going to come back and be female Thor, which would have actually tied in beautifully with, you know,
that would have been cool.
With how, you know, the female thing, like they did the whole female
ensemble
thing, you know,
Valkyrie and stuff.
Having her come back from the dead and, you know, turn into female Thor would have absolutely, you know, sent that thing skyrocketing. But
I think the green lightsaber is all Star Wars has left.
It might be.
You laugh, but really, I mean, first of all, it is pivotal. I mean, we talked about blue lightsaber versus green in Force projection.
I need to say this before you continue. I just want you to know something.
What?
And then continue your point. You and the green lightsaber are like all those damn fans that keep bitching about how they missed the boat. We could have had Han, Luke, and Leia in a whole ton of scenes. You screwed it up and won't let it go. That's the green lightsaber for you.
But Last Jedi actually gave it weight. I mean, all the flashbacks of Kylo turning into Kylo at the temple involved the green lightsaber. So it is actually pivotal to this saga, to this trilogy. So I think it needs to make an appearance at some point. The blue lightsaber is a callback to the other two trilogies, but the green one really like has a pivotal moment in the events of this saga. So
why?
Because it was the one that Kylo saw that turned him from the light to the dark.
All right.
I could see that.
I guess so.
I can see that.
It's my favorite lightsaber, so I wouldn't be mad if it showed up, but
and as far as like what else can they show us, I like I said, I feel like Force Awakens stole all the best moments. I mean, you got the chills from Han Solo's death. You got to see the Falcon fly again. You know, all these things. You even got to see Luke. He didn't do anything, but you got to see him at least. So you got everything in that movie. Last Jedi didn't really have much to pull on, so they brought Yoda.
Yeah, so like what other fan service do we get other than the rumors of Hayden Christensen being on set? You know, but we've been reading that for 2 years now.
Honestly, and this is how, you know, to kind of bring it full circle, the way that I think they could kind of stick it is if it does turn out to be like the Rise of Skywalker, like Skywalker is a new generation of Jedi. You know, instead of, oh, he's a Jedi, like, no, he's a Skywalker. Like, you know, because that would make everything else make sense. Like, why is Rey powerful in the Force? Like, what does she have to do with the books? You know, why is the Emperor, like, you know, what does he have to do with all this stuff? It's like, okay, well, if they bring the Jedi back and it's a total rebirth of the Jedi religion, and it's just under excuse me, a different name, this like the Skywalker line or whatever they're going to call it. That would be fan service-y. It would be cool. It opens up a whole nother line of storytelling possibilities, because you don't have to base it on the Jedi, you base it on the Skywalker thing, whatever they're going to call it, and it's based on what's in the books, which is the original Jedi code, and it kind of like purifies everything, and it's like hitting the reset button. So I think that would be, but anything else, it's like, what were you like we said, what were they building towards? Like, and I'll love it no matter what. I just for the sake of our point, it's not going to be as huge and climactic and bombastic and just incredible of an ending as Endgame, because it's like, okay, well, what were we really? Because
while
you said, AJ, what are we building towards?
Yeah, while you were just talking, I was thinking, I'm like, does that stick it the way Endgame did? I'm like, not really, but I would love that a hell of a lot more than, here's Rey. Oh, yeah, we found out she's a Skywalker. Cool. Like, that's going to piss me off so bad if that's what the end game of this is.
Well, and again, like I said, it just makes it feel so much smaller than the other two trilogies.
Yeah.
Because the other two trilogies were about Darth Vader, who basically eliminated the Jedi, and now this new trilogy is just, this person's another Jedi. We found another Jedi. That's how you close the whole thing?
Yeah. Just having it end the way you said, somewhere where you can sit there and take these next 6 movies that we know about already that are coming out over the course of the next 6-7 years, whatever the hell it is, and go, at least you can play off the end of the original 9, quote unquote, air quotes here, and play off of it instead of starting something completely new. At least that would help. But like ending the same way as Endgame, I hope it can go half as good as what the hell Endgame ended like. Seriously.
Yeah.
I don't want some BS thing. Like I said, I don't want Rey to be a Skywalker. I don't want JJ to go ahead and throw everything down the tubes that episode 8 put out just because they're being petty or something about the directors or whatever. Give me a good movie that has a logical ending point, and I'm going to be happy with it.
Right.
Very true. Very true. And here's one thing where Star Wars has it going for it, because like you said, Marvel, you pretty much, before you even went into Endgame, you knew exactly what the general outline was going to be, right?
Right. We knew they were going to mess with time somehow and save all these people.
Get the stones, undo the snap, heroes win, right? Yeah, I mean, it's the finale of a saga, so you know that eventually, from the brink of destruction, the heroes are going to overcome. That's the challenge that every finale has, is exactly the way what's going to be happening at the end.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's going to play out specifically, but you do know the general arc of it all. By Last Jedi, not, like we said, not really setting much up that we know of, you don't really know how this movie's going to go. We do know that the heroes have to triumph in some way, but we don't even know what that means at this point.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe Star Wars has something going for it in that respect, that they can really surprise us with this one, because there isn't a whole lot to build off of to go into it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, let's end on. I have.
That's a good way to hold up hope on that one for sure.
I agree. So I have one quick speculation, and then we'll close up shop for this show. But I really think that the whole lineage of the Skywalkers being a new line of Jedi is probable. And that's why they brought Rian Johnson back to do another trilogy of movies, because he did The Last Jedi and kind of like really planted the major seed of that. And they loved what he did with the Force and making it, taking it such a crazy direction. So I think that they're bringing him back to continue what, at least the ideals that he presented in The Last Jedi. So.
Okay.
We'll hit that on a future show or something, but that's just my thought. So anyway, thanks again for tuning into the Nerf Herder Council, guys. We appreciate it. As always, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. You can get your official Nerf Herder Council swag at shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. Thanks to Galactic Empire. You can check out their 2 albums of Star Wars metal available on Rise Records. You can find the Nerf Herder Council on Spreaker, Stitcher, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, most Android podcast apps, Pocket Casts, Castbox, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those fun places. Our episodes are all available on YouTube. The website is nerfherdercouncil.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can email us, nerfherdercouncil@gmail.com, and you can interact with us directly through our Twitter page, which is at NHC Podcast. So once again, I'm your host, JT, at Dog Pound Jedi. He's AJ.
At Drake Adams, 579.
He's Steve.
At JSteve1005.
And the NBA draft lottery is rigged, and we will catch you next time.
This bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my nerf herder.